It is a kingly gift, a piece whose value is incredible. Given to Bilbo from Thorin in the lead up to the Battle of Five Armies, this shirt would have its own long history in the hands of the hobbits. However, in the Hobbit book, Tolkien drops a hint that its past may be as interesting as its future. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we explore Bilbo's Mithril shirt and who it was originally made for. I've seen the discussion pop up on social media from time to time on who this Mithril shirt was intended for, given that it fits a hobbit so well. And while there's been a very viable and fun option commonly presented, there are a few others worth covering. First, let's take a look at what Tolkien tells us in the pages of The Hobbit. Now the dwarves took down mail and weapons from the walls and armed themselves. Royal indeed did Thorin look, clad in a coat of gold-plated rings, with a silver-hafted axe in a belt crusted with scarlet stones.
"Mr. Baggins," he cried, "here is the first payment of your reward. Cast off your old cloak and put on this."
With that, he put on Bilbo a small coat of mail, wrought for some young elf prince long ago. It was of silver steel, which the elves call Mithril, and with it went a belt of pearls and crystals. A light helm of figured leather, strengthened beneath with hoops of steel, and studded about the brim with white gems, was set upon the hobbit's head. Here we are told the coat of Mithril was made for some young elf prince long ago. The most popular theory among fans is that this is referring to Legolas, and he is certainly a valid option. First off, he is referred to as a prince, something not every elf can claim. With the shirt having been made long ago for an elf prince would check out, as Legolas in the books is believed to be greater than 500 years old, but certainly less than 3,000. No doubt there are a lot of things left vague here. Not knowing when the Mithril coat was made, or Legolas's exact age, leaves a lot to the imagination. So while Legolas is a fun option due to his proximity to Erebor, and having Frodo receive the shirt once made for another member of the Fellowship, it is worth exploring other possibilities. For one of the earliest and most impactful options, we're gonna go way back. All the way back to the late First Age, as the elves continue to lose ground and kingdoms to Morgoth. In the lead up to the Fall of Gondolin, we find Idril, daughter of King Turgon. In her wisdom, she had prepared a secret tunnel for the elves to escape the hidden city should it fall. And as the city comes under attack by Morgoth's great army, and her husband Tuor sets out to fight, Idril would seek to protect her son. This was the fashion and the array of the elven houses of the Gondolin, with their signs and emblems, and the bodyguard of Tuor, the folk of the Wing, was accounted the 12th. Now is the face of that chieftain grim, and he looks not to live long. And there in his house, upon the walls, Idril arrays herself in mail, and seeks Eärendil. And that child was in tears for the strange lights of red that played about the walls of the chamber where he slept, and tales that his nurse Meleth had woven him concerning fiery Melko at times of his waywardness came to him and troubled him. But his mother coming set about him a tiny coat of mail that she had let fashion in secret. And at that he was glad and exceeding proud, and he shouted for pleasure. Yet Idril wept, for much had she cherished in her heart the fair city and her goodly house, and the love of Tuor and herself that had dwelt therein. But now she saw its destroying nigh at hand, and feared that her contriving would fail against this overwhelming might of the terror of the serpents. While one might initially write this off as any regular coat of mail, we see it challenged with a blade in a similar manner to Frodo's Mithril when Saruman attempts to stab him. This comes during the fierce battle, as the traitor Meglin attempts to kidnap Idril for himself. Now then, Meglin had Idril by the hair and sought to drag her to the battlements out of cruelty of heart, that she might see the fall of Eärendil to the flames. But he was cumbered by that child, and she fought, alone as she was, like a tigress, for all her beauty and slenderness. There he now struggles and delays, amid oaths while that folk of the wing draws nigh. And lo, Tuor gives a shout so great that the orcs hear it afar and waver at the sound of it. Like a crash of tempest, the guard of the wing were amid the men of the mole, and these were stricken asunder. When Meglin saw this, he would stab Eärendil with a short knife he had. But that child bit his left hand, that his teeth sank in, and he staggered, and stabbed weakly, and the male of the small coat turned the blade aside. And thereupon Tuor was upon him, and his wrath was terrible to see. He seized Meglin by that hand that held the knife, and broke the arm with a wrench, and then taking him by the middle, leapt with him upon the walls, and flung him far out. Great was the fall of his body, and it smote Amon-Gwareth 3 times, ere it pitched in the midmost of the flames. And the name of Meglin has gone out in shame from among the Eldar and Noldoli. Like Frodo's mithril coat, Eärendil's would turn aside the blade, attempting to take his life. Though it's worth noting here that Meglin's strike was hindered, so this still could have been a regular mailcoat. Yet it's also notable that the blades of Glamdring and Orcrist survived the Fall of Gondolin and made their way into Third Age history. Is it possible that Eärendil's coat could have found its way back to the dwarves through his own line? It is certainly yet another fun theory, and the fact that Eärendil would later sail the skies in a ship made of mithril would make for another great connection. There are, however, reasons to think Eärendil's shirt was not mithril, the biggest being the rarity of mithril. The only places we are certain it was found are Numenor, Valinor, and most notably, the Misty Mountains. Unless there was mithril brought from Valinor by the elves, or trade had brought mithril from Khazad-dûm all the way to Gondolin, it's fairly unlikely this shirt would have been made of that metal. With this in mind, we'll move to another possibility, though likely a dark horse candidate, the Sindarin elf, Amroth. Amroth is the son of Amdir, Second Age king of the realm that we would later know as Lothlorien. Across the Misty Mountains, elves under Celebrimbor would found Eregion, in large part due to the dwarves mining mithril in Khazad-dûm. If this precious metal brought forth elves from the west, is it reasonable to think Amdir commissioned a shirt of mithril for his son around this same time or before? It is believed that Amroth was born sometime prior to the year 730 of the Second Age, so he very well could have still been a young child according to elven growth when Eregion was founded. While the Sylvan elves of Lorien would come to resent the dwarves, this was not until they awoke the Balrog thousands of years later. For the most part, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm were friendly with elves during this time, and given the fact that Galadriel and her daughter Celebrian would later use Khazad-dûm to flee Sauron's invasion and go to Lorien, it's entirely possible the dwarves were likewise on good terms with the elves to their east. Now, the biggest question here, as with Eärendil, is how the mithril coat would have made its way back to the dwarves. Perhaps it could have been reacquired by the stunted people after Amroth outgrew the shirt. However, it's certainly likely that Amroth, the doomed king for whom Dol Amroth is named, was not the elven prince in question. A similar option to Amroth is none other than Legolas's father, Thranduil. Could it be that his father, Orofer, commissioned the piece for the protection of his son? Like Amroth, the tricky thing with Thranduil is that we do not know the date or location of his birth. It is presumed, given the writings in Unfinished Tales, that he would have been born in either the late First Age or early Second. Orophaire does not relocate to Greenwood until around the same time as the founding of Eregion, meaning Thranduil would have been well into adulthood. Thus, Thranduil being the young elf prince in question is also unlikely. Should he have gotten it in his own youth, it would have come during a time when he and his father would not have been known by royal titles, having not yet come to Greenwood. However, I think what we know of Thranduil might actually make a strong case for the shirt being made for Legolas. We know that he marched with his father in the War of the Last Alliance, where he would bear witness to Orophaire's demise. Could this experience, witnessing the dangers of the Dark Lord firsthand, have led Thranduil to fear for the life of his child later in the Third Age? This is a huge point for both Legolas and Eärendil. Both were children during or after great conflicts with the Dark Lord, whereas Amroth was seemingly born right in the middle of over 1,500 years of peace. There is another thing about Thranduil that would make an intriguing connection to the Mithril shirt. For in the pages of The Hobbit, it says, if the Elf King had a weakness, it was for treasure, especially for silver and white gems. And though his hoard was rich, was eager for more, since he had not yet as great a treasure as other elf lords of old. Could it be that a coat made of Mithril, also known as Moria silver or true silver, was something he commissioned out of decadence rather than imminent threat? While in the end we cannot say for certain who this shirt was made for, I do rather like the theory that it would have been made for Legolas when he was a child. Though notably, it's found in the treasure hoard of Smaug the dragon, so it seems pretty unlikely that Legolas or any elven prince ever wore it. It's interesting to explore how one small passage in The Hobbit can connect to so many parts of Tolkien's world building for Middle-earth, and how a question that seems simple can turn out to be far more complex, with a greater knowledge and understanding of his work. For me, it makes the tales all the richer, knowing that even the smallest things can be rooted in such detail. But could the Mithril shirt have been made for yet another elven prince? Or perhaps someone the dwarves could take for a prince? What do you think of other candidates, like Dior of Doriath, or perhaps one of Elrond's sons? Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Landry Quinn Walker, Ice Glazer, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.